Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on the Vision System Integration for InduSoft Web Studio. We have a very special guest today from Cognexs, Mr. Rick Ruskowski.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Ruskowski from Cognex, and I'm Director of Marketing for our Vision products.
So, as we get going here, some quick introductions. My name is Scott Courtier. I am Senior Technical Sales with InduSoft, and I'm just going to introduce Rick, who is Senior Director of Marketing at Cognexs for the Vision Systems Business Unit. We're good friends with Rick, actually. A couple of our employees used to work with Rick. And so what we're going to do is very soon here, I'm going to hand it over to Rick and let him talk about Vision Systems and some of the products that Cognexs has. And then I'm actually going to show you a demo on how to use an ActiveX object from Cognexs and just how easy it is to connect up to their cameras and their Insight Explorer tool, in this case via an emulator. So that's what we're going to do. So with that, Rick, I'm going to bring you back online here.
Okay, great. So hello, everyone. I'd like to start by first thanking InduSoft for giving Cognexs an opportunity to present today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cognexs, our business, including our service, support, and training programs. Then I'm going to give you a high-level overview of our product offering and share some common questions we often get about developing vision applications. And then I'll conclude with the more technical content on how Cognexs products can be integrated into both the control and HMI platforms. So I have about 30 minutes of material, and I'll also be part of the Q&A session at the end. And just to kind of finish my introduction, I've been with Cognexs since 1998. And prior to that, I was with the Rock Automation Allen Bradley Vision Group. Started out as a software engineer and as an application engineer for a number of years before moving into marketing. And so I've been in the vision business for quite a long time, and as Scott mentioned, that's where some of InduSoft colleagues and I have crossed paths in the past. So with that, I'll begin. So some background on Cognexs. Our company started about 35 years ago with really a single purpose: to build the best vision and machine vision products. Over time, our products and markets have evolved, but we've really stayed focused and only deliver machine vision technology. The adoption rate for vision has really accelerated in the past few years. As an example, at the end of 2012, this slide would have shown we had shipped 700,000 systems, and now we're at over 1 million. So that means in just the last 3 years, we've shipped over 300,000 systems. This has been fueled a lot by demand in China in the consumer electronics segment, as well as our ID products business, where we continue to grow at a rate of about 30% per year. So again, we really just focus on machine vision applications. If we look at our customer base, we have experience selling to and working with many different kinds of users with different needs and different levels of experience across virtually every industry where machine vision is used. And I'm sure most of these industries look familiar to you. And in case you're wondering, automotive has traditionally been our top market. But as I said a minute ago, the consumer electronics space has really exploded in terms of automating assembly processes in China, especially in response to rising labor costs and sophisticated assembly processes that often require better than 10-micron alignment accuracy. And it's an area that we specialize in terms of our vision technology. At Cognexs, we use a mixed sales model where we provide direct sales and support to our large and global customers, but we also have this hybrid model where we have a network of nearly 500 channel partners globally to provide local support and complete turnkey solutions for using our distributor and PSI networks. So in addition to our in-house technical support team, all of our distribution partners typically have at least one trained vision specialist on staff, and most provide in-house classroom training. So from Cognexs, we offer a full range of online e-learning modules direct from our website for self-paced learning. And like Scott mentioned about InduSoft, we also conduct webinars probably about every 2 months on various topics, and we archive those, and those are available on demand as well to focus in on a specific niche or area of our technology. And we have a global training organization with regional training centers to help our customers minimize their travel time and costs and we can even provide customized on-site training at the customer's facility. And so you can see here our training schedule. We have training classes going on just about every week of the year. From a footprint perspective, we have a physical presence throughout North America and about a dozen countries in Europe, and China, India, Japan, Korea, and Singapore, plus partners in virtually every country with a strong manufacturing economy. So whether you're a distributor or an integrator, an OEM, or an end user, I'd recommend visiting our website if you're not familiar with Cognex, or you can contact our inside sales team if you have a vision project, and we can put you in touch with the right Cognex agent for your geography and your customer type. So there's even a page on our website where you can request a product demo. So what exactly can machine vision do for you? We like to use the term GG, which stands for Guide, Inspect, Gauge, and Identify. And so I think about the first step of guidance. So vision can guide a machine like a robot by finding an object or a part. And finding is an essential first task of solving any vision application, because before you can measure or inspect a part or guide a robot to pick it up, you have to find it. And Cognex really has the leading pattern finding technology in this area with our patented vision tool called PatMax. And one of the real values of starting with a robust finding step is, in a lot of cases, you can eliminate hard tooling to orientate the part for assembly or inspection. The hard tooling often is costly and creates bottlenecks in the production line. So with vision, parts don't have to be oriented to be inspected or measured. Likewise, even if you have parts that are flowing on a continuous line, you may have a photo sensor detecting when the part's in place, and depending on the reflectivity and the nature of that, the position of the object in the field of view in front of the camera typically will change from image to image. And so you need a pattern finding or a part finding algorithm to locate where the part is before you can do any other tasks. So the next category is inspection. And really inspection is becoming more and more predominant as companies, the brand reputation really depends on making sure that no bad products make it to customers. And so vision can inspect 100% of the products and can keep up with very fast production line speeds. The next area is gauging. Gauging, think about a lot of manufacturing processes when they go wrong. It's often when a machine is out of tolerance and it may be creating products that are out of spec. Non-contact measurement using vision is fast, accurate, and can automatically alert you to any process variation that's gone bad so you can quickly correct it. And the last area, identification, I really want to emphasize because this is an increasingly important application in manufacturing across many industries. Our ID systems provide fast, accurate reading of 1D and 2D barcodes, and we have OCR, or optical character recognition technology, for reading human-readable text. And this enables item-level identification and traceability throughout the manufacturing process. And I said earlier, ID is one of our fastest-growing application spaces, and we expect to see that to continue for the next 3 to 5 years. So to help put GG in perspective, I have a few real applications that I can show you so you can better visualize what a vision system can do. So the image on the left shows the image shows a fill level defect. We can divert this bottle off the production line before it gets to the case packer. And here's an example of a capping error. The cap is not properly seated and the safety seal is not secured to the cap. So shipping products with this type of defect can lead to leakage in shipment, product returns from the retailer, or worse, a recall order from the FDA if the problem is widespread. So these are easily solved problems with vision, detectable problems with vision. So here's an image in an automotive application where an operator installs 2 screws and 2 nuts. And we call this an error-proofing application where you often have a manual assembly process in many stages in an automotive plant, on a powertrain line, for example. But the vision is deployed to verify that what the operator is supposed to do is done correctly. So here, the vision system is verifying that the screws are fully inserted and that the nuts are correctly installed. And as we see in the next image, the nut was installed upside down. And this is a common practice in a lot of automotive plants to have these error-proofing stations. In a typical powertrain plant, for example, in a transmission buildup, you might see on the order of 120 to 150 vision systems and barcode readers throughout that manufacturing line. And here's a typical robot guidance application. The vision system detects the location of products on a conveyor and sends the coordinates to a robot for picking. And in this image, you can actually see the robot going down into the field of view and grabbing one of the products. So coming back to the ID side of things, here's an illustration of a typical pharmaceutical packaging line. And really, global regulations are mandating what we call item-level serialization for all products entering the supply chain. And it's a major initiative to really address the growing problem of counterfeiting. And if you've looked at any interesting market data from the FDA, the data is suggesting that roughly 20% of the global supply of pharmaceuticals are actually counterfeit. That's a pretty scary number. You think about all the online ordering and things like that. So this initiative, which puts a unique serial number on every item coming out of a pharmaceutical plant, needs to be read and tracked, not just in the manufacturing side, but it will grow further into the distribution and retail side in the future. And so you typically have 4 to 5 or 6 barcode reading or OCR reading stations along the line, tracking these barcodes, verifying that the data encoded in the 2D data matrix code matches what's printed in human readable text. That data is being logged to a database, which will in time become a global database. And in 3 to 4 years, when you go to a pharmacy to get some medication, they'll scan it with a barcode reader, and that will verify through the database the authenticity of the data manufacturer and where that product was made. So we have a dedicated application that has an easy-to-use operator screen for setting up parts and configuring the barcode reading and the OCR. And again, I said it compares the data encoded in those two and can send confirmation back to the PLC or the control system that the serial number is correct and it matches something that's supposed to be in the database. So I think those are a few examples of how vision is used today. Kind of to summarize at a business level, the benefits of machine vision in terms of return on investment vary somewhat by each industry, but it mostly comes down to the fact that consumers today expect products to be both perfect and affordable. And vision can help ensure that 100% of your products are inspected and that no production errors reach the customer. Think about minimizing costs. You have lower warranty costs, warranty claims, because products that are bad are being caught prior to shipment. So switching to products now, here we have some examples of vision systems from Cognex. On the left is what we call our checker vision sensor. It contains an image sensor, a high-performance DSP, integrated LED lighting, a lens, plus an Ethernet connection, and onboard I/O. This type of system is used for simple presence-absence checks, counting of objects, or verifying a position, maybe a position of a label on a bottle. And the output is a simple pass-fail or no-go, no decision. So the output is binary. Checker sensors can usually be installed and configured by a plant technician with very easy-to-configure software. In the middle, we have our Insight vision systems, which are also completely self-contained. All the electronics, image processing is inside. These systems are much more powerful with advanced vision tools. They can be used for making high-precision measurements, guiding robots, assembly verification, ID code reading, and flaw detection. And a typical user of these systems is more often a vision specialist or a plant engineer or controls integrator. And on the right side, we have our industrial vision controller. And this is essentially an industrial PC running our Cognex designer software and can do both 2D and 3D vision applications. It often connects multiple cameras using gigabit Ethernet. These systems are mostly used by advanced users and programmers because at its core we have a programmatic library inside. So for how these products integrate into the factory floor and for today's demo, I'm going to focus on our Insight product line. This is by far our biggest selling product in the portfolio and the most often used in our factory automation business. So before I move on to that integration, I do want to talk about our ID products. Cognex does offer a full line of both handheld and fixed mount ID readers. And think about 2D barcodes require an imaging system to be able to read them, and that's where Cognex really entered the ID market space. But what we found is the industry is rapidly moving over to using image-based readers instead of laser-based readers for 1D barcodes, because we can achieve higher read rates with an image-based system than we can with a laser. And this is an area that Cognex is really investing a lot in and really excelling in terms of improving the read rates with image-based reading technology. So I'd like to cover a few basic questions we get when we had talked to new customers, new users of vision, and we'll go through these one by one. So common question is, how important is lighting? Number 2, how long does it take to implement a vision project? Number 3, should I use an integrator or can I do this in-house? And almost every person asks, how much will it cost and what are the factors that really impact the cost? And so these are all really good and common questions, and unfortunately there's not an easy answer to each of these, but I'll step through each one by one. So just how important is lighting? I can't stress enough the importance of lighting for machine vision. Simply put, lighting can make or break a vision application, and there's still a lot of art behind good lighting design, and really nothing makes up for know-how of the various lighting techniques. So you see here 7 different attributes of lighting that can make a big difference. Simply moving a light 5 degrees from the position of where it's currently at can make a big difference in how that image appears to the camera. But at the same time, there's also plenty of cases where a simple built-in illumination system, like we have in our checker products and some of our Insight products, they're perfectly adequate. These are essentially an array of LEDs that surround the lens and project light directly from the camera onto the part. And about 20% of the applications we serve, that type of illumination is perfectly adequate. By contrast, if you think of a highly reflective or a part that has very shiny surfaces on it, these often require more sophisticated lighting solutions. So lighting is really important, but many times simple lighting is perfectly adequate. So how long does it take to implement a vision system? And I really like to break this down into 4 main stages. I think one of the most important is to think about a feasibility study rather than just trying to take a camera and put it on your production line. And in this stage, we really want to make sure that we get alignment between the stakeholders deploying the vision system. So what is the vision system supposed to do? And you think about in a manufacturing environment, you sometimes have a production manager trying to get production volume, quantity out the door, and you have a quality manager setting quality standards. And often what happens is you have these very strict quality standards, you apply a vision system, and they start rejecting a lot of parts. And the production manager is saying, hey, what's going on? So I think it's really important that those 2 organizations are aligned in what they expect for the vision system. And I think many customers find out the first time they put a vision system online is the number of bad parts is actually higher than they realize, because we're checking now not just spot checking, we're checking 100% of parts. But application feasibility could be a couple hours, it could be a couple days, depending on the problems you're trying to solve. And then you really have the application development time. This is where you're actually building up the vision solution, probably building up an image database so that you can repeat testing, make some attribute changes of the vision parameters, see how it affects the reliability of the program. And again, this could be a few hours for a simple presence-absence application, where the types of defects are very distinct and easy to determine. But it could take weeks to develop a complex application where you may be trying to inspect 10 different parts on the same line and have to deal with line changeover and all those types of mechanics. Probably one of the more time-consuming areas is the actual commissioning. That's moving into production. So often we start with the feasibility and the application development in a lab environment, and now we have to take it out onto the line. And we've got to wire it in or integrate into the PLC and the HMI. And so if you're thinking about a checker sensor where you might have a discrete input providing part present information off a photo sensor and a discrete output for a pass-fail, integrating that into the production line is often pretty trivial. It's just wiring in and you've got a reject diverter and you're done. But if you think about trying to do maybe high-speed part tracking where you're sending data over Ethernet to the PLC and it's trying to track a part to a downstream diverter, maybe 10 stations down from the inspection station, that could take more time to do that type of integration. And something we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the tools that Cognex has developed to help really reduce that integration time to the PLC and the HMI. I think about 10 years ago, it was really, we spent more time integrating the PLC than we were building the vision application. and it's something Cognex is really invested in, trying to make sure that those systems marry together seamlessly. The last area is maintenance, and while it's not a lot of effort, I usually like to mention it because a few simple things could save you headaches later. For example, if the camera is operating in a dusty environment, you may need to have a procedure to clean the lens periodically. Or if you're in an environment with high humidity changes, you can get moisture forming on a lens, so you may need to create some airflow to keep the lens clean. So those are some things that you have to think about depending on the environment where you're putting the vision system. Should I use a system integrator? And my advice is if you're new to vision, it's really an important application for you because it's a high expense part you're trying to inspect. If it really needs sophisticated lighting, system integrators add a lot of value, and nothing makes up for experience. And so you think about this, especially if you're new to vision, I really like to emphasize success is the most important goal, not necessarily the first cost, because if you're unsuccessful or have a suboptimal outcome, you'll probably not use vision for a long time. And in the end, that's going to ultimately make you less competitive in the market. And so the value that system integrators bring are a couple-fold: their experience, their efficiency in knowing how to develop the vision application, and they often have a stocked lab with all kinds of lighting and the know-how to know which lights to use to get the best results. So they add a lot of value, and I highly recommend using system integrators who have experience, especially if it's something new to you. You know, when vision becomes a strategic part of your manufacturing process, that's when we start to see more and more companies build the in-house capacity because they want to use vision strategically as a competitive manufacturing strategy. And then it makes more sense to have that skill and expertise in-house. But if you're putting in 3 or 4 or 5, systems per year or solutions per year, just staying current on the technology is difficult in the learning curve. So I think that's where you see the value of system integrators. And of course, how much will it cost? And of course, there's no simple answer to that, and I really like to break it down because a lot of people start to look at what's the hardware cost. And it's a valid question, but there's a lot of other costs associated with the full life cycle, deployment, commissioning, maintenance of a vision system. And we have cameras that range in the checker sensor at the $1,500 range, and we have 5-megapixel cameras that are over $10,000. And case in point, we had 2 very large food manufacturers last year. Each purchased more than 100 5-megapixel cameras. So the goal was to be able to inspect a range of products, more than 40 or 50 different products on the same production line. So they have a high product mix, and they were doing optical character recognition. And the position of the characters could vary from product to product. And with a low-resolution camera, they would have to physically move the camera at product changeover time. And that moving the camera equates to product downtime. It equates to re-verification that the vision system is performing correctly. And by moving to a 5-megapixel camera and higher resolution, they could image all of the parts without having to move the camera, so it dramatically reduced downtime and it dramatically reduced verification after the part changeover. And so from that perspective, the hardware cost was insignificant compared to the line changeover cost. So you really have to figure out all of those factors when you think about the true cost of a vision application. So as we kind of switch gears now onto the more technical content, I really like to think about Cognex's evolution from its early days when we were a supplier of vision libraries, so essentially an API, a C API to a bunch of vision functions that we sold to mainly semiconductor and electronics OEMs. And those companies were mainly responsible for developing their vision application. They developed their entire HMI. They did all of their control. Often it was PC-based. And so Cognex solutions really focused on just the vision. And in the late 1990s, there was a real emphasis to change the strategic direction of the company to focus on core factory automation as our primary business model. And in order to do that, we had to make a major shift in our investment and the type of products that we built. And that was around the time that Alan Bradley decided to divest from the vision business. And a team, myself and a team of engineers, came from Alan Bradley to Cognex, and our first charter was to help build up the factory automation business And that started with understanding, well, what does that mean? And that means developing a programming tool or an application development tool rather than a C library. But it also meant building in native protocols to talk to PLCs and an HMI strategy that could get our vision solution onto a third-party HMI. And so we've invested heavily in building that infrastructure, and we really like to view it as a platform agnostic product where we want to have best-in-breed connectivity to the rest of the world. And as I said earlier, in our early days of our Insight product, we would spend 2 to 3 weeks on the PLC integration, trying to send TCP/IP messages and get the timing down, and it was nothing but tech support phone calls and a really frustrated customer base. And as we developed the actual protocol library, we've gone from weeks of integration time often to a day I can have the camera being triggered by a PLC and getting results back and performing job change. And so that's been a major emphasis. And then on the HMI side, we've heavily invested in the Microsoft Windows architecture and have solutions all the way down at the CE platform base up to full .NET PC-based capabilities. On the PLC side, it's as simple today as selecting a vendor and a protocol and assigning tags to an output. So we have tags that reflect the parameters and properties, both inputs and outputs in the vision system, and we can map those from the vision system to data table addresses or registers in a PLC. So the setup is quick and easy, point and click, and you've got the data formatted and exchanged between the two devices. And then on the Insight side of things, we have an OPC server, and so this is an application that sits on the PC, and it insulates the protocol between the camera and the PC, and then it serves up the information up into any OPC client. So the InduSoft software would just register this OPC server, and then the tags that we talked about exchanging into the PLC, those same tags can be mapped to the OPC server, and now you've got data reading and data writing through a standard OPC interface, and the tags in the InduSoft software map to the tags of the Insight software, and that data exchange is seamless. So the last piece of the integration to the HMI is really the image from the vision system. And most factory floor protocols, in fact, all factory floor protocols that I'm aware of, including OPC, really don't provide provisions for an image object. So in the context of a PLC, and this is okay because you normally don't send an image to a PLC, but for an HMI, how do I get the image there? And it would have been nice for OPC, as an example, to include an image data type, but it doesn't. It has strings and ints and floats and things like that. And so we need a way to transfer the image over to the PC, to the HMI. You might think that the whole point of a vision system is to eliminate the need for an operator to look at parts, but operators and production managers typically still want to see what the vision system is doing. Or they may need to make parameter changes, and they don't want to haul out a programming tool to do that. So we need a way to get the image and the associated vision tool graphics to the HMI. So what we've done is we've taken the entire frame of the image container used within Insight Explorer, which is the Cognex application development tool, and we've published it as a native .NET user control, and it has an additional COM ActiveX wrapper layer, so you can use it in a variety of HMI environments. And what this means is you're not getting an add-on, piece of software that was developed and isn't maintained. This control is literally used by our software. We've built our application development tool around the control, and so it has a huge library of services that you would have full access to from your HMI client. So all of the image scaling and graphics rendering is done for you, and you even have access to what we call an Insight, something called a custom view, which provides both data display and parameter setting directly inside the display control. You think about a lot of HMIs, you are, maybe if you're using OPC, OPC pulls in the data, and then you create a text box control to show that information, or you create a push button to map data back into the other device. Well, with the Insight display control, we have this function called a custom view where the vision application developer can create a mini HMI right inside of the vision program. So you can add buttons and checkboxes and data entry boxes and status displays, right into the Vision program. And that information is managed within the context of the display control. So what that means is as you embed the display control into your HMI, you can have full access to all of those parameters on the Vision side without doing any development in the HMI client at all. You can if you want. If you want to make nice screens and have a different type of flow, you're perfectly capable of doing that. But think about if you have a Vision application developer who understands the Vision side, and then a more general HMI developer thinking about the broader picture of how do I have all these screens and what's critical. You don't necessarily have to link those two together. The Vision interface and the data being reported and any parameter change you might need to make can be wholly contained within the display control, which is really powerful. So I talked about these different communication paths. I thought it would be useful to kind of understand the differences between the data flow and how it can go and kind of the subtleties of timing that can occur. So you think about a camera can be exchanging real-time pass-fail information to a PLC, and that, from the camera's perspective, is really high-priority information. So that data at the end of the inspection goes out. That data could be routed from the PLC to the HMI for visualization if you want, or if you wanted, you could have a direct connect between the camera and the HMI using OPC. And OPC is really not a real-time communication protocol. We do our best to get messages out, but the client application isn't necessarily pulling that data at the same rate that the camera is running. We have applications where cameras might be running 1,000 parts a minute. Well, the HMI is not going to be refreshing 1,000 times a minute to see that data. So OPC is usually process monitoring, statistics, batch information, maybe batch information going down into the camera. So it's just one path. And earlier I said we don't really have a good form for the image, and so that's where the display control comes in. And what the display control does is it encapsulates the image, all the graphics, and the data transmitted to the HMI into one protocol, deterministic, it's all packaged together. Because if you send data via OPC and send an image via this other method, there's no guarantee those are going to be synchronized. We actually treat the image transfer as a lower priority task in the camera because of the volume of data. Think about going with OPC or to a PLC, you might be talking, tens of bytes or 100 bytes of information. A large application might be, 1K worth of data. We have a camera that can send a 5 megapixel image. So it takes the camera longer to transfer that information, so it does that more of a background task. And the vision refresh for many applications, you'll never see every image. Typically 10 per second is what you might see on the HMI, which is pretty good for what most humans can actually read or see. So I think that subtlety is really important to understand, and the real value of the display control is that it encapsulates all of that content into one object that guarantees that transmission, and it's trivial. You just drop it into your HMI, which Scott's going to show you in a minute. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Scott, who's going to show you a demo of the display control working inside the HMI environment. And I just want to make one caveat in terms of his demo. Scott doesn't actually have a Cognex camera in his office. We have what we call an emulator, which allows our customers to build their vision application off of an image database. They don't actually have to have a camera connected all the time, and that's a really handy and useful thing to do. But we have some security measures that limit the capabilities of the display control when you're using an emulator. So to see another image, for example, you're going to have to switch back to the Cognex software. If you have a real camera, it's a full-feature display control, all the images, all the functions work. But our emulator has some security precautions that limit the usage. So he has to deal with that a little bit in his demo, but I think you still understand the simplicity of how the control works. So, Scott, I think with that, we'll give it back to you.
Rick, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Rick, really appreciate it. I'll tell you what, I really enjoy doing these webinars, co-hosting these, because I think I learn as much as our attendees do sometimes. Before I take back presentation status, I just want to point out there's some contact information down below on Rick's slide there. That's typically sales information. And Rick, I want to call you out a little bit. As far as, you had pointed out whether or not you need an integrator to be able to put some of this together. I'd like to paint a couple of pictures and maybe kind of ask you an overall question about when or who should the average customer contact. So let's say that maybe they've got a very simple application and they really don't have the expertise in-house to do this. Should they contact Cognex directly, look for an integrator, a distributor? I'm assuming they wouldn't contact InduSoft. So who should they contact in a very simple, but they don't have the expertise?
I would say you can start with the Cognex inside sales team, and that's the number listed at the bottom, the 855-4 Cognex number, because we've invested heavily in the last couple of years, in fact, in building an inside sales team to be able to take those types of cursory questions. What's my next step? Where do I go? And then we can refer you to the right source. Should it be a direct Cognex representative? Do we have a distributor local in your area? And I would normally start with probably a distributor before a system integrator, just because really they're the sales agent to help qualify the application, make sure. And our distributors and integrators often work together. But the other thing I would say about our distributors is it's a little bit of a unique situation where the business model for our distributors is kind of all over the map. So in the Detroit area, in the big automotive section, I would say, it's a very large distributor, but a very big vision support staff. A lot of our other distributors are more boutique, small places where the Cognex portfolio is maybe 25 or 30% of their total line card. And they often have a robot line. They often have, various pieces of the puzzle. And a number of our distributors really kind of ride that line between integrator and distributor. And for simple applications can often just, with their pre-sale support team and their in-house technical staff can, say, here's what you need, here's the bill of materials, here's how you mount it. We can help someone, train it and configure it for you and show you how. So I think it's kind of as a range, but I think that's the value of starting with some of our distributors. And if it's, needs a large programming effort, a lot of different integration to different devices, our distributors and our integrators are co-partners in delivering solutions. And so they often work collaboratively on bringing solutions to market.
Perfect. Thank you. Before I take presentation status, I'd like you to, if I could have you jump back up a couple of slides. Not to the one that I had you this morning, but maybe, there you go, perfect, that one. The connectivity one, slide 30.
30, okay.
So go forward one. There you go. So just, I've been in this, not necessarily in vision, but in industrial automation for 27 or so years, and I've spent a fair amount of time doing a couple of vision systems and whatnot. But I've always looked at vision systems, and maybe our audience has too. I'm just going to throw some things out at you. I've always looked at maybe 3 different ways to connect to an HMI and or a PLC, where you have like some of your, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the checker product that was more of a pass-fail, almost like a sensor, a go, no go, good, no good, whatever you want to call it. And then you could also get the data out of the center for some measurements, some tolerances, and I think that's where your maybe your inspection part of your GG comes into play. And then the third thing, which was always a desire when it comes to the HMI, was getting the image out of the camera. And now, especially with this slide, now you're talking about data via OPC, data via FTP, not only the graphics, but it's so easy to do now. And then you've got the optical character recognition and all these different methods that you guys can get the information out in your custom view. I always, the way that I've been involved with implementing a vision system, it was if the part failed, then you'll show the image, and a lot of times you'll just get the raw image. But I think what really is kind of neat is you guys have the, and I know I asked you this before, but the information on the screen, the colored lines. What do you call that?
The vision tool graphics. So typically, maybe if I go back one slide, you see the green graphics that are being rendered to say this is the inspection area. These are results. We typically use green for good and red for for fail, and maybe other colors just as data or information, and you have complete control over the color scheme if you want. So I think that's the really valuable part, is you're getting a lot of visual context rather than just a raw image.
And when I do the demo, you'll see some of that come through. So, but thank you. And one question that I have is I'm gonna take presentation status back from you now. But as I do that, another question is with your OPC server, is that installed with the Inside Explorer product, or is that a separate download, separate install?
It's part of the installation CD. It does have a separate installer, so you don't have to install it, but it is standard and included with the product.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Because one of the things that InduSoft supports very well is OPC DA as a client. So I imagine that, even though I haven't tested it, I would imagine that that works pretty well together. So before I move on, this morning I forgot to share my screen. Can you guys see my my screen here? Rick, can you?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. All right, so before I move on and do the demo, I'm actually going to do a demo using an ActiveX object from Cognex, the Inside Explorer tool, and I'm going to put that on the screen. But before I do, while this is not an extremely advanced topics, we do have some additional resources on our website. If you take a look at our training videos, by the way, we have our full 5-day, typically 5-day training class online as videos for free, and one of those videos is covering ActiveX and .NET at the link that you see on the screen. You can also go to the training, let me in fact pull the website into view here. You can go to the training drop-down navigation online training videos, and you can go to, I think it's, we're at around 40 of those videos now, and if you take a look down here, you'll get to the, somewhere in here, ActiveX and .NET, past it. Regardless, in here is the ActiveX and .NET video. It's about 30 minutes long, and it gives you some good insight on how to use ActiveX, which I'm just going to touch on in this demo. And then we had a specific webinar a couple of years ago, and here's a link to that, so you can get right on our website and do that. And all right, let's switch gears here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a brand new project with InduSoft Web Studio. Before I do that, I'm going to actually open up the Inside Explorer tool from Cognex. So this is a Cognex product, and what I'm going to show, and this is what Rick was talking about earlier, is I don't actually have a camera here. So what we're doing is we're using this tool in an emulation mode to be able to send information to InduSoft just like it would be coming from a camera. So what I'm going to do is open up a job here. So I should be able to say open up a job and point to a folder that, now I've moved this around, but Cognex has actually provided this. You can see all these different folders with these different images and these different jobs. And I think one that we can all relate to is bottle inspection, and I'm going to choose the bottle inspection job. And what that's going to do is then load up all the different images associated with that, and I can actually hit play here and show you some of the, it's got good, it passes, maybe some with no liquid, some with the cap is not on right or the seal is not connected. And while we're going through here, what I'll do is when we get to maybe a good one here, I'll pause this. And now what I'll do is I'll open up InduSoft Web Studio, and I'm going to create a brand new project just to show you how easy this is to do from beginning to end. So what I'll do is just create a brand new project. I'll pick our local interface, which is 1500 tags, which I'm not going to use anywhere near that today, but create a full screen here. And once this screen comes up, I'm going to go into the toolbar and put ribbon up at the top ribbon. I'm going to put an ActiveX object. So we'll insert the screen here, and there's our blank screen. I'm going to choose the ActiveX control. Now what this will do is present me with a list of all the ActiveX objects that are registered on my laptop. Now your list on your computer might be different, and it'll be different from computer to computer. And so what I'm going to do is, since I installed the Cognex Insight Explorer that I just showed you a minute ago, that came along with the Cognex Insight Display Control ActiveX. And when I place that on the screen, I'm just going to get a little black rectangle here. If I double click on that, that you can see is actually the ActiveX object. It has to have a unique name on the screen. And I'm going to go into configuration in just a second. Before I configure it, I know that this particular one aspect ratio works out really well for 640 by 480, so I'm going to make it that. And as Rick pointed out on this morning's webinar, their tool also has the ability to do auto scaling, so you don't even have to get this right to the right size, the right aspect ratio. You can put this thing where you want it and the size that you want it, and let it do auto scaling for you. Is that correct, Rick?
That is correct.
Cool. All right, so I have this ActiveX, and one of the reasons why I pointed out the different trainings and the different webinars, because there's a lot of ways to within InduSoft Web Studio to connect with this. Within this configuration for an ActiveX or even a .NET control, you have properties, methods, and events. And the basic idea is properties are typically things that you would set up at design time. Often they're going to be things like fonts or sizes or colors or things of that nature, or things that are not necessarily going to be changed during a runtime. So, for example, we're actually going to connect this or configure this auto connect string in here. You could type in the string that would connect it up to the camera, the IP address and the username and password, etc. Now, methods within an ActiveX, now what methods are is they're almost like subroutines within that object. And anytime you trigger them and maybe pass them some parameters, they're going to do that subroutine, whether it's cause a connect or cause a disconnect, or in this case, refresh. And I don't know all the different parameters, but I wanted to point out that look at all the different methods and things that you can do with these controls. And then events are when something happens to that object, and every object is going to expose different types of events. One might be that you move your cursor over it, or you click on it, or you double click on it. In this case, you can see when the state has changed, Insight has changed. So all these different events, you can cause something to happen. And then when that event happens, you can then, within InduSoft Web Studio, write either a VB script or one of our built-in scripts, and then decide what to do based on that event happening. But for this, what we're going to do is just keep it simple here. I'm going to set up this auto connect string, and I'm going to tie this to a tag. And I'm going to name this tag connect. And that tag doesn't exist. And I'm going to make that a tag, and I'm going to make it a type string because we're going to type in a string value in there. And actually, I'm going to make a button that's going to set that up. And you don't have to do that. That can be done programmatically. There's a lot of different ways. I'm going to set this up to auto reconnect. And so then what I'm going to do is build a little button over here to the side, and we're going to call this connect. And that's just a label for the button. Now we're going to set up the command. And I have a few different ways that I can do this, but what I'm going to do within VB script is I'm going to put that connect tag. And in order to put that InduSoft tag into VB script, I need to precede it with a $sign. And then I can just start typing connect. And if you notice, the IntelliSense has automatically started to fill that out. It found that tag. I can just hit enter, and it's going to auto-complete that. And then I'm going to say, okay, I want that connect string here inside of double quotes. I want that to be, let's see, I just heard a beep. Can you guys still hear me? Rick, you still on?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I got a couple comments, a little bit about some audio, but as long as you can still hear me, so I think we're good there. Make sure that we still have everybody on here. It looks like, yeah, we got still our attendance. All right. So let's see, where was I at? Here. Oh, I know why I heard the beep. Is because I started to get out of that script before I completed it. So what I wanted to do is within this string, I'm going to put the IP address of my camera. In this case, I'm just going to use the local loopback IP address. Let's actually use periods, 127.0.0.1. That'll give me my local connection, in this case to the emulator. And then I'm going to need the username and the password. Since I don't have a password, I'm just going to leave that blank. And then, Rick, I think in this morning's webinar you mentioned that one is kind of like a priority. If you need to win over something else connecting, you can put a 1 in there and it'll win over the other connections. Is that the way that works?
That's correct. You can have different just and you can have a mode where it says, I would like to take ownership, and it will notify the other user that if some other computer is trying to attach. Or you can say, no, I don't want to take it. If somebody's got it, don't try to. That's what that can do.
Okay. All right. You were breaking up a little bit, but I think the basic idea is that this can cause it to take ownership of the connection.
That's correct.
Okay, so thanks. All right, so having done that, so what I'm going to do is this will set that string for that auto connect in this tag connect, which in this ActiveX object, it'll just pass it into this auto connect string. And at this point, what I should be able to do is save my screen, save this as main, and then I will set that, let's close this properties box here, I will set that screen as startup, and at this point I should be able to run my project, and just as a reminder, and I'll make sure that this gets going here. Just as a reminder, I'll go back to the Insight tool. Here's the fill level apparently is not correct on this. You know what, let's change. So we can go to another image. Okay, so there's a good image of a good bottle filled there, and when I connect to that, I should be able to then see that image with all those tools right in there. So the fill level, the cap, the seal, and everything is on straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop InduSoft Web Studio, and that's what Rick was talking about as far as their security goes. I can't do this all seamlessly with the emulation and whatnot. And then what I'm going to do is come back in here and go to another image, maybe one with the cap is kind of crooked here. So at this point, I should be able to then relaunch this. Now, you normally wouldn't have to do this. This would be seamless and auto doing this if it was connected to a real camera. And I'll connect up to that again. And so now you can see that image. And in this case, this one has the red outline to show that it failed, and the cap is askew, and we could get all kinds of information from that. We could even connect up to it via OPC and get data from it, or many different ways. So, you know, in really just a couple of, not even minutes, really, just a handful of seconds, I was able to get the graphics coming in. And boy, Rick, I have to tell you, where were you about 6, 7, 10 years ago in my career when I was trying to do this all with programming? I wish you guys would have had these tools then.
You had to open up a Windows socket connection and stream in a bunch of bytes. You draw everything yourself. And
yeah, I think we were passing individual bytes of the bitmap by not by hand, but pretty close.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to again open it up for questions. That's about all the demo that I wanted to show for you today. We're going to open it up to questions, and again, we can't hear you on this type of webinar. So if you put them in the chat panel or the Q&A panel, we'd love to hear from you. Don't have any questions in there right now. So what I'm going to do is just advance this slide and show you how to contact us. And there's some toll-free numbers for licensing and support, and how to contact us for sales information, info at InduSoft, or support at InduSoft.com for obviously support information. You can also chat with us on our website as well. We have a live chat there. Let me pull that up. If we go back, let's see, I'm off screen here. I'll bring that back here in a second. If you call up our website and then click on this live help, you'll open up a chat window. And there's also a nice user-to-user forum here, and you can contact us or other users through that as well. So I don't have any other questions. Rick, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Oh, I think that's it. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to InduSoft, yes, to have the opportunity to present. And if you have vision, projects or ID reading projects, we do give Cognex to provide you with our so thanks again.
Thanks, Rick. A question did come in. Is it possible to use the same style of tools with your more sophisticated tools? I don't know if that's a question for you or me. I don't know if I understand that question completely. Does that make? Do you have an answer for that, Rick?
No, I mean, we have all of our products have some type of integration capability. It's not the same exact display control. That's maybe part of the answer. And I would say from the Insight perspective, you can use a wide range in an application, and they can all be integrated into. So I don't know if that was really addressing the issue. Maybe we can get a little more clarity on the question.
Okay. So if a person that asked that can clarify or let us know if that answered the question. Another question came in. Is it possible to use Vision Pro or DataMan SDK.NET libraries with InduSoft?
So DataMan does have an SDK, the specifics, but I'm pretty sure you can do the integration into InduSoft. Vision Pro is natively a .NET application, and my understanding is you could embed a display control and write coding as well. I'm not familiar with Vision Pro as much, but we could certainly get someone in contact with you to follow up and make sure we got the right answer.
All right. So the person that asked that question about the SDK, please give us a call, either InduSoft or Cognex, probably Cognexs, and see if we can help you out there. The other person responded back that answered the question, the first question. One of the things that I wanted to pose, something that I have heard actually, was a question if through InduSoft can we cause a job to be changed inside or in the camera on the fly. So let's say a product changeover is happening. Is that something that InduSoft can change to the camera and pick a new job and move on to the next
Absolutely.
one? Rick, I think the answer is yes.
Absolutely. There's a couple of ways to do that. I mean, you can, through the OPC interface, you can give it the job name and give it a load command, and it will load. You can, through the ActiveX control, you could call a file open function, and the file open will bring up the dialog from our Insight Explorer right into that screen, because we provide a custom file open which can browse cameras, file systems, and load the job. You could send that name through a PLC, and the PLC can issue the load command. And the other thing that often happens, think about recipe management. Many of our users create a master file, and they maybe have values that control the recipe, and those values get pushed from the HMI into the job file itself, and you don't physically change the job file, you just change some of the input criteria that directs the flow or the behavior of the vision application. So there's a lot of different paths.
So it's something you can do dynamically then on the fly, and you don't have to take things down and start over again.
Correct.
Right. One of the things that I'm going to do is I did this on my original test application. I just want to show how easy some of this stuff is to do. I'm not going to. I don't really type this fast. I'm actually copying and pasting something that I did earlier. This is a built-in scripting command that we have within InduSoft Web Studio called WinExec, and basically it's like a command line. I'm launching a program. You could use this to launch Notepad, for example, or Excel. In this case, I'm going to use this to launch Insight Explorer. And when I run this screen, for example, let me go close Insight Explorer here and say, yep, I want to close that. And let's say for whatever reason, while you were running this application, you wanted to open up Insight Explorer, this would be one way that you could do it. So while it's still shutting down, wait for that. And let me make sure that did, in fact, shut down. It did. And so now here I'm going to say, all right, let's open up Insight. And what that'll do is cause that to go ahead and launch. So maybe behind a security screen or something along those lines, that would be something that you could do if you needed to call up that tool. Or maybe some other tool. That's just kind of a nice function that we have. So lots of different flexibility in there. So I was kind of doing that to stall and see if there's any more questions that came in. Looks like we have answered all the questions. We got feedback that we answered the questions that we answered properly. And I guess with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. And I'd like to thank Rick. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot. Hopefully our users did too. I would also like to encourage everybody, when you get the survey, let us know how we did today. Fill that out in the comments section. We'd really like to know. Also, if you have a vision application that you're interested in, put that in the comments section. We'll be happy to pass it along to Rick and his team. And again, if you give us your shirt size and address, we're going to send you a free T-shirt just for joining us. And Rick, do you have anything else to add?
That's all I have. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and look forward to seeing you guys in future webinars. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end it. And thank you very much, and have a great day.